Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Bitcoin and Beyond. I am Melanie, your host, and today we have a very special guest, Brett Herskope, otherwise known as Eli Herf in the Stacks ecosystem. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you so much. Well, I call you GK, but thank you so much, Mel. What a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited. It's been a long time coming. I've been a huge fan of you as a friend, as you know, and watching your growth and seeing the incredible work that you've been doing, and then all of these amazing podcasts. So it's a pleasure to be a guest, to be honest.
I know, and what a long time coming. Brett and I have been, Brett was my first friend really in the Stacks ecosystem. And it's been a long friendship, sort of 4 years now. And we've seen each other kind of change roles and become who we are now, and who knows for the future. So let's dive right in, because today is going to be a short show. I normally start by asking people about their Bitcoin journey, but I think yours is a very interesting one because it's such a shift from what you were doing to where you are now. When I met you, you were just early on involved with Stacks Parrots, now known as the Pandemonium, and you were a teacher.
I was, yeah, exactly. Pretty crazy. So the Bitcoin journey, long story short, my friend, who is still my main Bitcoin friend, told me to buy Bitcoin in 2015, and I didn't because I couldn't get my head around it. Thankfully, I got my head around it in around 2017 and fell in love with it conceptually. Didn't buy enough. I think everybody didn't buy enough when they first found out about it, particularly now where it's going crazy. But yeah, I was a teacher. I loved teaching, but after COVID, I had a career change. I needed to take some, I just needed to do something different with my life. I was a teacher for 10 years and I got a lot out of it, and it was an amazing journey. But in that period where I was teaching from home, we had quite heavy lockdowns during the pandemic here in Melbourne. I was naturally online a lot more. I was consuming a lot of crypto and Bitcoin. I know that there's like that sort of separation for people, content and whatnot, but I started exploring NFTs, and I actually, funnily enough, started exploring it on the Tezos side. So Tezos is just like it's a chain, honestly, that seems to me like it's around just for art. And so I love that. And art is, I grew up really enjoying and appreciating art. My mum is quite a talented artist. She never went on with it, but, took us to galleries, and my dad was really into his music. So I sort of grew up with that sort of appreciation. Funny, because I was quite like a sporty guy. I wasn't actually like artistic myself, but I always really enjoyed it. On holidays, we'd go to museums and get immersed in the culture. And we always had like, bits and pieces that we'd buy and bring home in terms of like art and whatnot. And so, yeah, I guess I got into like what we call NFT Twitter or crypto Twitter or whatever you want to call it. And I sort of saw this like confluence between blockchain and art and community. And I really, like, as a teacher, and as growing up playing in sporting clubs and whatnot, but particularly as a teacher, I really understood the strength or the power, I guess, of community. And because like a school is a community, and you've got your classroom community, and then within your classroom there's these mini communities of kids, and then you've got the community of like surrounding schools, and there's the parent community, as bit of an ongoing bit of a running theme there. And like I know we've got a shorter show, so essentially I just kind of fell in love with it conceptually. And I being a teacher, obviously I was very aware of how important it is to be able to communicate effectively. And I noticed that a lot of NFT projects on Twitter and in their Discords and on their websites perhaps weren't communicating as effectively as they could. Maybe English wasn't their first language, which totally makes sense because it's like a global environment. And so threw myself out there really, and started like helping out a few projects, helping them, I guess, edit their things and be a moderator and communicate on behalf of them because they might have been from different countries and whatnot. Helped a project on Ethereum sort of scale up and do quite well back in the day. And I don't know how they're going now.
It feels so long ago, and it's not.
I know. they still exist now. Well, in crypto time it is, isn't it? And then I guess started helping out with some projects on Stacks because back then, obviously, and with the inception of Ordinals, it's slightly different, but Stacks was as close as we thought we were going to get to being directly on Bitcoin, or to being as close to Bitcoin as possible in terms of where like the NFT scene was at. So that really spoke to me because like at heart, I'm like Bitcoin first. I'm not Bitcoin only. I'm not some maxi, but I'm certainly Bitcoin first. I think it's a spectrum. I think every blockchain is like a playground, and it's a spectrum of where you sit, and it's about kind of knowing, where that blockchain sits in your sort of like spectrum of trustlessness or decentralization or whatever kind of speaks to you. Anyway, so I took over a project because the founders, again, they were from Malaysia. They really had no idea what they were doing. They weren't going to rug or anything. They just were going to fail. So I took over a project which was called Stacks Parrots. It was going to fail. Like it was all over.
Yeah.
And really like got it off the ground, got it cooking, like took it over, got a couple of devs, one who's still a colleague of mine. He's a colleague of mine at Gamma, and he's still my teammate there. And yeah, we built.
Ciro. It is Ciro.
Hey, Ciro.
Right?
It is Ciro. Yeah. He's an absolute legend.
Yeah.
It's such an honor that he ended up getting a gig with Gamma as well. Like it just made my heart sing. Yeah. And yeah, we built product, which I'm more than happy to talk about. We built like the first not the first actually. Kudos to Sargal for kind of kicking off a virtual gallery environment. Theirs was kind of a specific one for the burnt explorers, when they burnt a heap of explorers. But we built a virtual gallery for Stacks, and then that evolved to end up having a media player. And then we got an idea from that media player to then build a music app, and that's still alive. It's called Parrot Radio. So kind of like all of that journey, like the TLDR is I ended up meeting the crew at Gamma, and then like luckily enough, they loved what I did. They saw how involved I was in Stacks. They saw what I could do with that project, and I guess they learned my skill set, and they were in need of someone back then. My role is now head of growth, but back then to take over the community role, which was really what I was doing as a teacher. Like I said, all of those communities that you look after, and got a full-time job. And that was this March 22. And here we are in 2025. It was wild. And we met, near the end of 2021, I think. So it's really crazy. It's really fun.
Yeah, I think it was around the Megapont. I think either before or Crash Punks.
It was Crash Punks. I was helping out there. Yeah.
Yes, we met because of Crash Punks, and I was sad, I think, because I couldn't get I either won something or I couldn't get on the mint list. It was one of those two, but it had to do with getting a Crash Punk, which was my profile picture for, I think, almost until I doxed. Yeah.
Well, the art's really cool. Grace is such a talented creator. I think I always vibed with the Crash Punks art because I was a huge fan of Snow Crash, which was the sci-fi novel in 92.
You made me read that book. You and me had because we both avid readers.
Yeah.
And I remember you said to me, I should read Snow Crash because you were such a fan.
What did you think?
Yeah, fantastic. That kind of got me on it was I think I'd read The Sovereign Individual. And I think that was kind of my second foray into reading kind of submersive media or literature, or kind of, to do with what we read now. And that kind of led me down a radical garden path. So yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. No, pleasure. It's funny. Neil Stephenson, who was the author, coined the term metaverse in that book, which is crazy because there's how prescient, like so much of that book are things that are playing out now with like hyperinflation and useless dollars and kind of like, I guess, like micronation states and whatnot. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Same with the Sovereign Individual. I mean, the fact that those guys wrote that then, and look at it, it's literally playing out, and it always kind of, I think to myself, did that make me, because I don't consider myself a Bitcoin maxi, like you say. I think what's interesting about the Stacks environment or the Stacks ecosystem is that it's not about being a Bitcoin maxi. It's about, like you say, being Bitcoin first. But I always think about how much the Sovereign Individual influenced me into this idea of, and I think you have that same kind of philosophy of, building out what artists deserve. because, let's kind of take a step back, because you've had like an extraordinary, I think, one of the most evolving journeys and one of the most prolific journeys in the Stacks ecosystem and in the Ordinals ecosystem, so, and both with Stacks Parrots, which became the Pandemonium, and then Gamma as well. So you've been very spread, and I think very well known when it comes to the art community. And even in sort of through Parrot Radio and Ethereum. So let's kind of go back a little bit. So Stacks Parrots evolved into the Pandemonium. Why the name change? Why did Stacks Parrots become the Pandemonium? And did you find that kind of affected the community in any way? I ask that because of being able to pivot in what we're building, and in this sort of, what we have now isn't what the future is.
Yeah, well, I like, hats off to you, because you were quite a big part of that. I remember you told me on a call, like, Brett, you're doing too much. You need to like narrow your focus. And it's something that I've really learnt working at Gamma. That's why we've chosen art as our focus. You can't do too many things. You can't be a jack of all trades, master of none. You had to really, like, I guess, focus. And that almost sounds a little bit like counter to your question, because when we evolved from Stacks Parrots, which is a name that I love, Stacks, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have chosen that as the name of the project either. So, but when I took it over, there were things that obviously were out of my control. For example, the name. I've never loved any project that has called themselves like the insert blockchain here, insert kind of
like the Ethereum Parrots, or
Yeah.
and you find that they're not called that. They're not. It's not the Stacks Crash Punks or the Stacks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and so like, and you've had experience like in regards to branding. That's just not really how things needed to work. It was very limiting, and I love that advice from you. You've been an amazing confidant in that way. But we did it because we wanted to build, I guess, the main thing with the Pandemonium, and it's a play on words, because it's the collective noun for parrots. And so at our heart, because the artwork was parrots, and we sort of stayed true to that kind of like identity, we wanted to carry that forward. And it was like just kind of like broader, because like this space is a bit of a pandemonium. Everything's kind of crazy, but also it's the collective noun for parrots. And we thought like that. Yeah, and that's more of a brand. That's more of like, oh, the Pandemonium. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Rather than like Stacks Parrots, it wouldn't make sense for Stacks Parrots to have built on ETH, or to build, to have built onto Ordinals and whatnot. And so I guess our tagline is, we build for creators and collectors, or multi-chain builders for creators and collectors, actually, is what it is on the website. And so, yeah, to step back, I guess when we built the virtual gallery, we did that because we wanted people, and this was back when we were only on Stacks.
This is the Stacks Gallery.
Sorry to interrupt you, the Stacks Virtual Gallery, because we have the Stacks Virtual Gallery, which is still alive. I went into mine yesterday. Yes. And we have Ordi Gallery, which is on Bitcoin.
Right. And Parrot. So let's just say that before we
and Parrot Radio.
Talk up. That's right. So yes. So you basically involved with, let's just say, the Pandemonium community, which is the community which obviously feeds into these three things. So it's the Pandemonium community. Inside the Pandemonium is the Stacks Gallery, which is a gallery for you to view your Stacks NFTs, whether they are audio or visual. Then you've got your Parrot Radio, which is a music player. It is a news tool, so you can go on there and get music news. And it is also a place where you can view audio and visual. You can play and create playlists and blah, blah, blah. Then you've got Ordi Gallery, which is a gallery for your ordinals. And then you are head of growth at Gamma and Signals. So those are Brett's roles. Hello and busy.
I know. Okay, so and here was me telling you that I need to narrow my focus, but it is focus. It's so
it's art. Underlying art. That is your focus.
Exactly. And it was very art driven, because obviously for artists, when they sell art in the digital landscape, you want your collectors, whether it be on like a screen in their house or in a virtual gallery, to be able to actually like enjoy it. Sure, it lives in our wallets, and sure, you can go and check it out on a platform. And I think at Gamma, we have a beautiful UI for viewing your art And I love it. And I think that it's a nice place to go on your profiles, and, everything is really slick. You've got the integrated Bitcoin and Stacks app now, so you can see your Bitcoin and Stacks art, or, you can just pick one of the chains if you like on your profile, at a time, or both. But, having options, I think, is key. So, I have in my office, I have a digital frame up and I can put up my artwork, but also the virtual gallery is fun. And, like, I still enjoy it, but my kids, for example, and their generation, like, that is going to be their thing. They're going to, like, roam around these virtual environments.
Yeah.
And we were inspired.
Sorry to interrupt you again. I keep interrupting you, but
No.
There's so much for us to talk about, and you keep inspiring me to say things. I think a lot of people compare the products that we're building for our lives today and how we live our lives today, when in fact these are very early builds for how our children are going to use these things. So like you say, right now, yes, you use your mouse or your trackpad and your computer screen or your digital gallery on the wall, but these kids, and if you're in the Oculus, you've got this horrendous big thing on your face, but that's not going to be the future. They're going to be sitting in these rooms saying to their friends, hey, let's walk around my personal art gallery, or let's hang these in my virtual hangout zone. And I think that's where your thinking is and this is no shade to anybody else, but ahead of how a lot of people are thinking, and the same with Parrot Radio. That is the future of music, and how you building is the future of art. Anyway.
Yeah, no, and I've said that before. It actually reminds me of something which I've talked about, despite these products, is that this whole thing that we're involved with, it's just like the foundation for where it's heading for, like, our kids. Because, for example, my kids they just go, yep, cool, we own digital art just like we'd own physical art. It doesn't blow their mind. Whereas when you explain to people, oh, I own digital art, it takes a lot of explaining. They don't quite get it, and that's okay because it's not common. But for kids, and that's what I mean, like, we're just laying the foundations for these kids where the concept of digital ownership, they see digital ownership and physical ownership as the same thing. It's, for them, it's completely normal. And that's why I think the crypto cliche of this is so early is so true, because we're a generation or even two generations off it just being mainstream, in my opinion. Or, maybe I'm being idealistic, but I do think that it is heading that way. So yeah, look, I completely agree. And so, yeah, like, I guess it was funny. We built this environment where you could enjoy and immerse yourself in what let's call visual art. But then obviously there's music. Music is an art. There's so many arts, literature's an art. We could go on cooking, blah, blah, blah. But
because you were playing it originally in your gallery when you built the gallery.
Yeah.
Not only did you have art, but you actually built a music player in the gallery. So you could walk up. I mean, that is crazy. You could walk up and you could play your music on, and that's kind of where it began, right? And then moved into an actual app itself, which is available. You can have an app on your phone and listen to your music NFTs in your car.
Yeah, anywhere, exactly. And we thought, well, I love the fact that we had this media player inside the gallery, but it's not where you want to consume your music. Like, I own music by different musicians on Stacks, like Arno, like Longstreet and others. And I love to listen to them on my computer. It's great that I can go to Gamma and listen to them 100%. It's great that I can go into the gallery and listen to them, but it's not really where we hang out to listen to our music. Sure, when we're working, perhaps. But these days, there are all these different, services where and people consume their music when they're out on a walk, when they're in the kitchen, when they're gardening, when they're in their car, whatever. And we thought, well, why can't you listen to your music NFTs this way? There were apps and there were certain places around, and I know we're like pushed for time, but essentially you didn't have to own the music. And to me, that was just wrong. I was listening to like amazing musicians like Violetta Zeroni and Emma Miller and whatnot, just like saying like, what are these ridiculous streaming apps where people can just stream our music for free when we're trying to sell it? Like, we're getting, this is the same issue that's happening in like Web 2, so to speak. It's not right. And so we thought, well, there's a very obvious answer to this. And we had a look at the market and we were honestly shocked it didn't exist, where you just need to be able to own the music, which means the musician has been paid, because that's what this space is about. It's about getting artists paid, because they should be paid for their wares, visual artists, music art, musicians, writers, whoever. And then when you own that music, you want to be able to play it. So we thought, well, let's build an app where if you own your music, it comes up in a playlist. You can just press play and play through what you own, or you can set up your own little playlist. You can have a look, obviously, at like the visual NFT, visual art that you own whilst you're playing it. And it was so obvious to us. And so, we built it basically, and it's called Parrot Radio. We're very proud of it. We went multi-chain. So, we also thought it's limiting, particularly for a product like that, to just be on one chain. Like in regards to some of that stuff, I think being chain agnostic is super healthy. So, it's on ETH, it's on Optimism, it's on Base. We're looking at Solana and what's the other one? Ape Chain, because there's music heading onto those ones. And so, all you do, there's no wallet connect, so there's no security. People worried about security. Obviously, if we were to implement a wallet connect, we would do it properly anyway, but there's no wallet connect. You literally paste in your address. So you paste in your BNS or your Stacks address, or your alphanumeric address. And if you own music NFTs, they'll come up and you can enjoy your music. So it's it is very simple, but it's a media player for the music that you own. And that's the key thing. You own it, which means that the musician has been paid and it's a free app. It's a free app at the moment. We've built it with zero money and we maintain it with zero money, but we're super proud of it. And like you said, it's ahead of its time, but who knows? You've got to be in it to win it. And we're very proud of it. And, we want to keep it alive because we know that how important it is for creators and collectors, which is great because, again, my partner at the Pandemonium, Ciro, is a colleague of mine at Gamma, and we, at Gamma, we're here for creators and collectors. So I just get this beautiful kind of blend of where I work and what I also do with my personal projects with the same ethos or the same goals. So it works really well.
It says my mic is muted. Can you hear me?
I've got you.
Okay, good. I got a notification on screen. Sorry, it is live, people, as you can see. So no editing out the little oopsies. Brett, I think I do also believe, and I've said this to you a couple of times before, and maybe it'll come, but I think, for you guys to grow as Parrot Radio, you do need support. I think those kind of things still need to be figured out because it's an important app. But again, I keep saying it, you keep saying it, we need a new word for it, but it's too early, and I've learned that in releasing music on Stacks is that people aren't there yet. They're not used to paying for it. For Spotify kind of ruined the idea of paying for something with value. Just because you can't touch it, feel it, see it, doesn't take away its value, So I think it's a brilliant thing, I think it's a brilliant thing. And I'm hoping that with this SIP 31 and the endowment, we can move forward into supporting projects like this, supporting the growth of art. I've been a voice in that, in sort of saying, and I know they are as well, because the understanding that, you come in for, obviously, you're going to get those people coming in for the DeFi, but they have to stay for some reason. There needs to be gaming. There needs to be music. There needs to be art interaction. You can't just buy an NFT and then it sits in your wallet. So, these products are very important products. But let's talk about Stacks Parrots and how you guys were one of the first projects to take the parrots, as they were called back then, take your project and put it onto Ordinals.
Yeah, well, I guess, I was lucky enough to be working at Gamma. And it's funny. So if you look at a lot of the companies and the products that were had, I guess, first mover advantage, but also for good reason, because they'd been building so close to Bitcoin. So Gamma, Leather, Xverse, obviously the guys at Ordinals bought, stuff that Trevor Owens has done, and there's been others.
Well, Grace as well. Again,
Grace, exactly. Like Set Zeus and things that he's been deving with SBTC and whatnot, through Hero and all of that sort of stuff. So it's like everyone had been so close to Bitcoin, like, you know, and same with Megapont, they were super early as well. So it's like there were people so ready for that, and we just had to do it. Like it's Bitcoin. I was Bitcoin first. I loved Bitcoin, and so we thought we we certainly didn't leave Stacks. Like I said, we still got the products there. We still have NFTs there. We built a burn to redeem. So I'm not sure if it was the first one or not. I don't like the whole first thing, but we built a burn to redeem contract where you could burn your parrot, you redeemed a parrot pass, because then we kind of had ownership of the art, because again, a lot of the art I didn't have like a say over, so to speak. So we're just kind of like part of the rebrand. But yeah, we thought let's like build on Bitcoin as well. And so we developed Ordi Gallery, which is very, very similar concept to the Stacks, virtual art gallery. And yeah, that's still alive and kicking, and it's doing really well. I'm kind of shocked that we're the only ones who have kind of had a crack at it. But yeah, it was really fun. And we just, again, same as like with Parrot Radio, kind of moving on to, well, not moving on to, like integrating and including other chains. It made so much sense for us to be Stacks and Bitcoin, just like, we were at Gamma, because obviously that was where our hearts were, Everyone who I think was on Stacks loved Stacks, but also found Stacks because they loved Bitcoin. There's so many, like the Velar guys, like they've got, Bitcoin integrations. You can swap Stacks to Bitcoin on there, and also Bitflow did it, so there were so many people that just loved Bitcoin, and that's why they were there. So it just was, it made a ton of sense. And also I just like fell in love with the concept of like that permanence and that immutability, and kind of like preserving something on Bitcoin. And that's, why obviously like a huge part of what I do with like working with artists, as my, in my role of head of growth, like with our partner program at Gamma and any other artists who'd like to release work on Bitcoin. So I loved it so much, like we had to do it. It's been a brilliant move. It meant that our community grew. It meant that we also, got new eyes on the project, and, we had to expand. You also, as like as life changes and businesses evolve and adapt to survive and to hopefully thrive, it was, just once it became a possibility, like at Gamma, of course, we were going to take it with two hands.
I think that's a good point, Brett, is that in any business, particularly though in this fast moving environment, you shouldn't be, a lot of people are scared to pivot. They're like, okay, oops, I've gone out there, I've made myself public in this way. Now what do? Do I rug this, or do I leave this and start something new? There's nothing wrong with holding on, because that's what you did. Like you say, you held on to the original Stacks community. You gave us, we all got the opportunity. I still have my favorite NFT, Ordinal, my first Ordinal, which is my bright pink Stacks Parrots, which is still in my Sparrow wallet. because
that was fun.
Yeah. So we learned a lot. And I think the Stacks community, because as you say, Bitcoin first, because that's how we found it, right? We were all Googling Bitcoin and going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And how can we, that's a big thing about the Stacks community. How do we take Bitcoin and how can we use it, and not just let it be a vault sitting there or in a vault? So what I wanted to ask you about NFTs, and Ordinals. I've got a lot of opinions about it. We've spoken about it a lot. I'm not going to go into mine because it's not my interview. Very hard for me to. But
it is about you. It's about you.
Thank you very much. It's about me. Let's pretend you're interviewing me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just said now that you fell in love with the immutability, the permanence of Bitcoin. Now, we started off with NFTs in the world of art on-chain, or on, in this digital art
using the blockchain. Yeah.
Crypto art. Yeah. So we started off with NFTs, and then it kind of evolved 2023 into Ordinals. It's 23, yeah. Now, don't you think, and what are your thoughts about it? Does everything need to be permanent? Does everything need to be on Bitcoin? Or is there hope for NFTs?
No, I certainly think that there's hope for NFTs. I've said it publicly. Like, I think every blockchain is like a playground, and it's like a spectrum of playgrounds. And Bitcoin is sort of like at one end of the spectrum, and then it goes right down to like whatever. I'm not going to name names, whatever you think is at the other end.
We
And
are
I
all
think, and I think, I'm like on chain first now, and whether that could be on ETH as well. But no, look, I think that there's still just so much room, because there's people from different ecosystems, there's people from different places around the world that can have different kind of like ability to spend, even at low fee rates, it's still quite expensive to put work on Bitcoin. And I guess that's a big thing with Gamma, and something that we kind of like have focused on, is why we see the future of inscribing on Bitcoin for being for art, or perhaps for fine art. I know that can be kind of like a broad umbrella, because it's, I almost want to be careful when I say it, but like, I'm happy to say, it's somewhere where you'd put like maybe the things you really want to like preserve, the things that you want to keep, the things that you're like, okay, this is like my Bitcoin, this is like my gold standard. But then the other chains are for the other stuff. Like Empress Trash, who's an amazing artist, she's a Gamma artist ambassador. She says, I when I create, I'll go, okay, I'm putting this on Bitcoin, but when I create this stuff, I'm going to go and experiment with it on ETH. I'm going to go and experiment with it on Tezos. And I think, that's where like Stacks will make sense, that like there's room on Stacks there's room for artists on Stacks to try different things and to experiment and to maybe earn some stacks to swap to Bitcoin, to then be able to like preserve something else onto Bitcoin. So I certainly see a place for like NFTs, obviously, if we want to like call them NFTs in comparison to Ordinals, honestly, on all chains, because I think that you limit yourself. And I think that's what was really important when we've built Signals, which, is coming super soon. That it is blockchain agnostic. It is platform agnostic. It's actually Web3 agnostic. You could launch like a Web2 physical product on it if you wanted as well. Because otherwise you limit yourself. And I think that, people will decide where do they want to put something and why. I think the why is also always really important. It's like, okay, well, why am I putting this on Bitcoin? Why am I putting this somewhere else? Yeah. And I think that that's like a very healthy outlook. I think in life, and I think, outside of this space, if you like limit yourself, or you're not willing to kind of like at least learn about other opportunities and then make an informed decision, I think, you really kind of like hamstring yourself for growth, really, or potential growth.
I love that answer. And it's so true. In real life, there's not just one art gallery in one country that everybody has to buy with their one currency, and there's this mindset, and I've noticed it being in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then kind of purely exploring other chains to see what's going on. It's not because I do work there or do anything there, but I want to know what's going on in the outside world. I don't want to just sit in my 2-mile radius, and you've got to realize that that's also healthy, is other minds, other groups, other kinds of people developing things, So we have many galleries with the many chains. We have many currencies with the different currencies, and not all NFTs are art. And I think people also, because they've started off as profile pictures and then moved into art and photography and a little bit of film, these are concert tickets. These are, maybe even messages that you send people, whatever, that you want to instantly delete once they've been sent. They might be pics. And you don't want them to live around forever. Well,
there are some on Bitcoin if you look hard enough. I certainly wouldn't be inscribing it, but yeah, look, exactly. And obviously, I think gaming has got a long way to go when it comes to Web3, but gaming, you need like fast transactions. So it's not going to, it wouldn't make sense. Yeah, exactly. Look, interestingly, obviously, like there are ways to put bigger files, but yeah, regardless of the file size, it will come down to speed, and Bitcoin isn't fast by design because it's so secure. And so, yeah, I guess, that's just another example. The same thing with music. Violetta Zeroni is a great example. She's another example of being way ahead of her time. Like, she is like the queen, the pioneer of on-chain music. Like, there's just no doubt about it.
Well, yeah, she's going to go down in history. That's
no one's
100%.
doing it better than her. Yeah. And she puts certain things on Bitcoin, but it's harder to. And then she still is releasing art, on her music, which is an art, on ETH and around the place, because there's just different ways of distributing it, and she's got an audience, and the whole audience is not going to necessarily buy it on Bitcoin. They, her last release did super well, and they all a lot of them did, but it just proves a point, that there's something for everyone. I think there are certain things that if I was an artist, I would certainly want to put on Bitcoin. I think every artist should at least put something on Bitcoin for like their own legacy. But again, like, if it's going to cost you X amount every time and you really can't afford that, then it's just not feasible as well. And that's the same for collectors. And exactly, there's collectors for every chain, and I think it's healthy to be like that.
Well, let's mark a moment in history here. We just recently hit 100 million ordinals. Right? So
I know.
I would love to watch this back in God knows how long and be like, oh my God, it's so many. I remember when I first started inscribing ordinals, because I was so
early.
Yeah, super early. And I remember, because I was so used to the Stacks, the cost of minting an NFT on Stacks. So I started doing the ordinals, and I remember it got up to $20 to create like a high res or whatever. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm stopping now. This is like, how expensive is this? And then, when it got up, it was turned into like hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars eventually, obviously. And that is the future of it. If you're a brand new artist and you're just starting out and you don't know your audience, first of all, signals is the way to go, because that's going to help you find your market. And if that market, which it's not going to be, if you're just out of art school or you're a brand new artist, you simply can't spend that money inscribing art on Bitcoin. That's for legacy art, for the Mona Lisa, Christie's, Sotheby's. But important things that I want to ask you. Music. Music, and this will lead into, you can kind of talk about both. As somebody who obviously is there's two things I want you to go to, and then I'll just let you sort of flow. The one thing is for people who are watching this who are not familiar with either Stacks NFTs or Ordinals, or artists who are only on NFTs or only on Ordinals, I want you to kind of just, if you wouldn't mind, sort of take us through the core differences between the two and why we would choose those. And then just to go back to my first love, music, what you've seen out there that we could still build on Stacks. What do we need to grow, and potentially not only with music, with other things you've seen out there? What do we need on Stacks? Because we've got the SIP, we've got this massive endowment, we've got people who, if you're watching this right now, start putting your proposals together, start getting them in for this funding, because in 2-3 months time, we're going to start spending, there's going to be money to spend on Stacks. So those are two things. Heed Brett's advice. Brett's going to give you advice for what you should be doing on Stacks because of the endowment, and so on. Those questions I asked you. So hit it.
So no pressure. So
the Oracle. I speak to the Oracle.
Yeah, just hit Good Kitty up and then Mel up, and she'll tell you what you know. No, or me. I'm here to help always, of course. At Gamma we spent a year building out the integrated Stacks and Bitcoin app for a reason. It's a buy blockchain app. It's got both. You can find in your profile. There's both. You can find all collections from both chains. But so I guess I'll go very quickly and simply for the key differences. I'll be careful to acknowledge that on some chains like ETH, and we're talking, obviously I haven't seen it. it actually there are some examples on Stacks, but so there are some on chain where the data is stored like on the nodes on the chain in certain ways, art on different blockchains. But for the sake of this definition, let's discount the on-chain art on the other chains and just kind of like how most NFTs are stored. So on Stacks, Solana, Tez, whatever, most NFTs you own. What you have essentially is a hash that proves you own it, and then that hash points to the artwork that you own. But that artwork is stored off chain, so it's stored in like a decentralized storage system, which is still great tech. Don't get me wrong, but there's just different counterparty risk to it kind of surviving. Like there's not that same like permanence at all. But the art is stored off chain. It's stored in what is good tech, but you own a hash, that kind of like proof that you own it. That's what allows you to hold it, trade it, transfer it, whatever. And that art is like stored off chain, for lack of a better expression. It's stored in like Arweave or IPFS, which are two very interesting, pieces of technology. Whereas on Bitcoin, the data that creates the file that shows you your art or shows you your music, or that creates the PNG, the JPEG, the GIF, the WAV, the MP3, the MP4, blah blah blah, is stored directly on chain in part of the transaction, which is then stored on all the nodes. So tens of thousands of nodes around the world, on directly on Bitcoin, so to speak. So it's in this like huge decentralized network of computers. So that's what creates that kind of like permanence, that ability that it's just it can't really disappear. Like because Bitcoin relies on the decentralization of its nodes, all of these computers that hold a copy of the ledger. And if one goes down, you've still got thousands of others. So it's essentially the most secure and decentralized, immutable, like uncensorable storage network on the planet. And that's where the data is. So there's the like, it essentially all but mitigates the risk of it kind of like disappearing or like having like link rot, like we've seen on some chains with like some NFTs, like that link between the hash that you own and the artwork off chain is gone for whatever reason. If no one's like upkeeping it, or no one's paying for it because there are costs to it and whatnot. So, you go to check out your NFT and it's just like a black square, whereas that can't happen on Bitcoin. Not to say that obviously, like, so that's the key difference. And that's not to say that like one is better than or worse than. They're just different, and it's worth acknowledging that. And it's like when you perhaps buy crypto, you know that when you buy Bitcoin, you're buying Bitcoin, and when you buy the others, you're kind of buying down this spectrum of perhaps like permanence, trustworthiness, security, all of these things. So it's always worth kind of like finding out, ask questions. A big reason why I got my job at Gamma was because I just put myself out there, got to know people, ask questions, put myself in a position to kind of, get to this place, which I still feel very fortunate about and for. So to move quickly past that,
let's just talk about, sorry, Brett, file sizes, and because there is, and like you said earlier, there is a way to put big files, because it's a question I get a lot. So I just want to kind of have that in the show. And I remember asking you, what does that mean? Like feeling like such an idiot. Recursion.
No, look, early days it was harder. Now there's a lot of ways you can do it. Now actually, like, there's a mining pool called Mara that allow you to use something called Slipstream. It's kind of unnecessary info, but it's basically like sending like a non-standard transaction. So to inscribe via any of like the public facing inscription services, or almost all of them, the file needs to be like 370 kilobytes or less, because that's kind of like part of the Ord client. But you can actually inscribe up to, and only up to, 4 megabytes, which is the size of an entire Bitcoin block. And you can do that. There's a couple of sites that allow you to do that, and via something called Slipstream, where Mara will then, there are obviously additional costs because every kilobyte costs, and then they take some service because they obviously need to like make a minimum per block that they mine and whatnot, without going into too much detail. But you can inscribe up to 4 megabytes. But through recursion, which just means calling upon another file. You could inscribe, you know, as long as you can afford it, insanely big files, because you could inscribe like, you know, do the maths. You could inscribe like 150 kilobyte files and then kind of like layer them all together and create a GIF or something like that. So, you know, you can create very big files by kind of like tying artworks together. And all of that is possible, but obviously like every kilobyte costs even when you do that. But then the final inscription, anyway, that's like in short, because I know that we're...
You can put, you know, a massive file. You know, if you are on Stacks, you can put a huge file onto an NFT, and
without the extra costs. It doesn't matter. Like with the Stacks NFT minting, you know, like whether you, let's say you're just minting one piece to a contract, it actually, the size of that file is like more or less irrelevant. It's going to cost you still like a negligible amount. Like, you know, it could be a huge song or it could be like a tiny bit of pixel art, and it's going to cost you essentially the same thing. So that, you know, that's kind of like the difference, and you know, and worth like noting in regards to like minting on Stacks in comparison to kind of putting something bigger. You know, the bigger that it gets on Bitcoin, the more expensive.
Yeah, and I don't think you should be afraid as an artist to start out experimenting with your artwork on Stacks, because there is a big crossover in the buying audience. You know, because again, going back to the people who came to Stacks are Bitcoin first, so they're interested in both. And I think we saw that in the beginning. You know, the art market on Stacks pretty much flatlined when Ordinals dropped, because those were the first people inscribing, buying, you know, or a large amount of those first people. So you know, I'm a big fan of Stacks, obviously, and art on Stacks. So it's important for me to kind of really highlight that for new artists, not to be afraid, because I don't want new artists to think, well, I'm not getting involved in Bitcoin or digital art because I like Bitcoin, but I can't afford it, or am I good enough? And it's also hard at the moment to, or harder at the moment to sell one of ones on Bitcoin. So that also is still evolving, you know, that environment. Brett, so let us move on then, just a little bit about music, and what you've seen when it comes to other chains. I mean, you know, we started talking a while back about what was it called again? The music marketplace and app on Ethereum. Violetta was on that.
Like there was like Sound, and there are a few others.
Yes, that's the one. So that kind of seemed to emerge to me as one of the sort of bigger players in the beginning, but obviously not artist first. They were more very much that same Spotify philosophy of let's get the artists in here as cheap as we possibly can, and then get the people to buy the music. So what can we build on Stacks in terms of art? What can we build on Stacks in terms of music? Where do you see that? What do we need?
Well, I guess as we need to wrap. Look, I think it's about like growing the community and getting more people in, and really like teaching and explaining and doing the things like you're doing with these podcasts to be like, what is possible? Because obviously, you know, at Gamma, we have the Creator Launchpad. You can launch your music directly on Stacks. I think the more the merrier. You know, obviously like competition can be healthy, but I think in regards to what can be built, I don't know. I don't know if I have like an answer straight away in regards to like product that is missing. I really think that hopefully the SIP 31 and like the budget can be spent really well for like helping people like you and Peace and all the people who are really trying to like make noise and get people in and teach people what's going on, and have the budget to spend the time to really get the word out for what already exists, because there are some really incredible things. And then let's see what Let's see what comes of that. We did so much due diligence around like before we built Parrot Radio, and it just didn't exist. So we have, the launch pads, we have the music app. Obviously we have the virtual gallery. We need we need the people, and we need more musicians, and we need their collectors to come. And I think, you and Peace and a number of others are doing an amazing job. It's been great to see like Reese dropping on Stacks and Bitcoin. There's some great stories, so that just needs to be shared more.
Yeah, you actually said exactly what I wanted you to say. Because that is it. We've got it all here. We've got one of the best marketplaces in crypto with Gamma. We've got Signals, which was built out of the minds of people here on Gamma. I mean on Stacks and Bitcoin, and it is an entirely new way of launching your product. Whatever that product may be, not just NFTs and not just Web3, not just Bitcoin, not just Web3, not just Web2. So, yeah, and we've got the player. The thing is we need to fund those things and market those things, right, to make sure that people are aware of it and that we get more paid builders, coming in and or that are here that can actually build these things out full time. So exactly, it's an incredible two ecosystems to be involved with, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Well, I mean, I know you do. So let's just as we close, possibly just a little bit. You already gave a little bit of advice. Get involved. If you are listening, you are an artist. Where do you go? Who do you talk to? And if there's kind of any, I've kind of also already spoke around that, but going forward with Gamma, with the Pandemonium, those are really just building out what we've already got, right?
So, yeah, look, I think advice. I think my biggest advice is, if you don't ask, you don't find out. Put yourself out there, jump on spaces, jump on the space that you and Peace hold, and Trip and Monkey and all of those other people doing great stuff on Stacks. Keep an eye out on the Gamma spaces. Check out Gamma. Feel free to reach out to me. I put my handle in there at EliHerf1. I'm always there to help people. My wife thinks I'm there to help them too much. I probably need more work-life boundaries. But, the people are here and they're really willing to help. And that's been something that I loved and still love about the Stacks community. And, obviously like that's bled across to Bitcoin with the people who are sort of like building on both. Everyone is really here to support. And so like ask and reach out and, make your voice heard. And, just that's really all I can say. That you really don't. When I was a teacher, probably a good place to wrap here. When I was a teacher, I used to tell the kids, like, if you need help, ask, because otherwise the teacher, obviously they're going to do their job. They're going to see your work and they'll be like, look, I need to help this child. But if you ask, if you actually speak up, you're more likely, to get the help at the time that you need. And I think like that leans into this space. Like, just get involved, put your hand up, so to speak, and ask for advice, ask for feedback, show off your work from the people who are here, because they really are. I think that's something that's very special. There are so many people who are, here to help, including both of us. And you're a great example of that as well. So, hats off to yourself. And I've loved, our friendship, and long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Brett. Yeah, exactly what Brett says. Hop over to EliHerf1, Melbell_BTC, Deorganized Media, Gamma _IO. Was it? Yeah.
Oh, so it's where the handle's actually at TRY Gamma, because someone's squatting on Gamma.
I remember that. That try Gamma and why, but that's another story for another day. All right. So those are the and I'll put them anyway in the descriptions on YouTube if you head over there. So yeah, thanks very much, Brett, for joining us today. I'm sorry it was a little bit rushed. and just for sharing your incredible insights behind Stacks, behind Bitcoin. I think you've had an incredible impact on both ecosystems, and so very proud to know you. Those watching on YouTube, please help the channel grow. Please subscribe. Please hit the bell. That sort of stuff. You know what to do on YouTube. I'm so bad at this. I think I'm like I don't know if I'm a boomer or a Gen Z, but anyway. Yeah, and just invite people in, share the space, please. Thank you very much to the organized media, to Peace Love. And we're here every Thursday, 12 p.m. ET, Bitcoin and beyond. Over and out. Thank you.